Today we're going to tackle the most difficult part of making this chocolate torte, which is the ribbons. I'm going to walk through step by step the steps that I took to create the cake and hopefully share some of those tips with you to make sure that you have a successful cake as well. First off, the chocolate that we use. Last time I used Ghirardelli for both of my chocolates, the white and dark, so I'm going to do the same thing this time. I'm using the bittersweet 60%, and for the white chocolate I'm using the classic white Ghirardelli. What we're going to do to start off is create the base for the ribbons. We take our melted chocolate and we mix in a 1/4 cup light corn syrup. Just pour that right on into it. I'm going to mix it together here. One of the issues I've seen with a lot of the other chocolates is that it's either very hard and people are unable to roll it out, or it's very oily, especially with the white chocolate. So this chocolate turned out very well for me, especially the white. It made it very easy to mold into the ribbons. So as you're stirring this together, it's going to start getting a little bit thicker here, almost like a fudge consistency. It's pretty thick, or like a thick frosting. Once we've got that mixed in, we're going to pour it right out on a prepared pan here. Last time I just poured it directly onto a sheet pan before I refrigerated it. I didn't really have any problems. It's a little harder to get off the sheet. So this time I'm going to put down some wax paper and I'm going to pour it right on top of there. See if it makes it any easier to get off. Kind of see how thick that is. We're just going to spread it out just a little bit here. Thinner here. Once we have this thinned out here, we're going to refrigerate it for about half an hour. You can see I've done the same thing with the chocolate. I've already spread that out here. We're going to stick this in the refrigerator for about 30 to 40 minutes until it's hardened up, and then we'll pull it back out and start cutting up our ribbons. Alright, now that we've let our chocolate set up for about half an hour to 40 minutes till it's just a little bit harder, we're going to start pulling it together and knead it for a couple minutes to get it into a nice ball. You can see it's pretty stiff here. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of roll it up and have nice clean hands, especially when you're working with the white chocolate. Make sure you don't get it near the dark chocolate either. So I'm going to go ahead and get that far away and just kind of put it into a ball, and we're going to knead it. As you're working with the dark chocolate molding, don't be afraid if it's pretty stiff. Mine crackled and took quite a bit before it came together in this ball, and you can kind of see it's a pretty big mess. And this is much stiffer than the white chocolate, which is about the same issue that I had last time. I was a little bit concerned my first time, but in the end, once I cut it up and rolled it out, it worked out just fine. So don't be afraid. Just keep kneading it together and get it into a nice smooth ball, and you shouldn't have any issues in trying to get together your ribbons. Alright, now comes the most exciting and for some people the most difficult part. We're going to start cutting out our ribbons and assembling our cake. We've let our modeling clay sit for about an hour at room temperature, and then we're going to take it and cut each ball into 4 equal portions. We're going to take that ball, we're going to start with a piece of white here and start pounding it out. Now the original directions for Bon Appetit say to use a pasta roller, which I unfortunately do not have, although I would love to have one. But I saw in a lot of the comments anyway, a lot of people had difficulty in getting it to go through the pasta roller, and I found that it's almost just as easy to roll it out as well. So the dark chocolate is a little more difficult, it's a little stiffer as we talked about before, but you can still roll it out. It takes a little more pounding. You can also use guides if you'd like, but for me, I can roll it out and just kind of gauge how thick I want it. And again, you want it about a 1/16 of an inch thick when you get to the end. So we're going to roll out each piece individually to about a 1/16 of an inch, and then the measurements are listed in the instructions there. There are some that are 8 inches long, and then the rest are 6.5 inches long. So one piece you've got to roll out a little bit longer. So once we get it to the thickness that we want, we're going to want to use a ruler or some straight edge tool to start squaring it off and to make some of our measurements. So I just use a sharp tip knife, square it off on the edges there, and then start using my measurements to get the dimensions that I want. And once we get that done, we're going to start getting our pieces here. Set this one aside. Now here's something important that I would recommend using as well. Is when I'm starting to assemble the chocolate, I start using some gloves. It helps keep your fingerprints off the dark chocolate. Makes it a little easier to move it around without damaging it or getting fingerprints all over your chocolate as well. So I'm going to go ahead and get these on. Bring over the pan of chocolate that I've already started. So we've got all these out, all of our different pieces on wax paper. We've cut most of our pieces out here, and I'm going to start assembling it here. You can see here I've just simply laid out the white chocolate for the base. These are all 1 inch thick. The dark chocolate is 1/2 inch thick. So lay them out on a cookie sheet or some sheet that you can keep it on. And then simply take the dark chocolate. When you're taking off the wax paper, you want to be careful not to stretch it out. So I use the edge of my knife and just slide it right along the piece here and lift it up very carefully. Take that piece and you're going to place it right on top, centered on the white chocolate piece. Now, if they're not exactly the same size, if you've stretched it out a little bit, don't try and center it on the piece of white chocolate between the two ends. Line it up on one end and let the other one be a little short or a little long. Most of these edges are going to be cut or covered somehow as well, so it doesn't really matter if they're not perfect, but make one end correct. So I'm going to go ahead and keep placing these on here. Simply press them lightly into the chocolate. If they're not sticking, you can also use some corn syrup. Lightly cover a little bit on the white chocolate and then press the dark chocolate right into it. Now, one of the main things I saw was really just with the ribbons, they all seemed very soft. Now, my chocolate is fairly stiff here, so it's going to be pretty easy to form it into my bows and have them stay that way. So I don't know if it was the different chocolate that people used, but either way, I would highly recommend using the Ghirardelli chocolate. Both times I've done it now, I've had the same results, so I believe that it's consistent. It wasn't just luck the first time. We've got all of our large ribbons cut out and assembled. So what I want to do is start forming the smaller ribbons. And the way that we do this is we just go ahead and pick one up. Again, if it's stuck a little bit, use the edge of the knife to loosen it. Again, you don't want to stretch these out. We're just going to peel it off here. Again, make sure that you can see my dark chocolate is sticking nicely to it. We're going to fold it over and just press together the ends here. You can see this is where I'm forming my loop. And be careful here. Again, mine's pretty stiff here, so you can see it's holding its shape fairly well all on its own. So then we're going to take those, press it down here, and we're going to cut off the ends, forming a V into the middle of the dark chocolate. So you can kind of do it at any angle you want, just try and match them up together. So you see we've got a pointed loop right here. We're going to go ahead and do that with 8 of our 6.5 inch strips. And what I'm going to do to help them keep their shape is I'm going to form it kind of in a large bow, because that's kind of the shape I want it when I put it on the cake. I'm going to place it on its side on my cookie sheet. And I'm actually going to refrigerate these for a little bit, and that's going to help harden it up and keep its shape as well. For 2 of them, I'm going to cut them at opposite diagonals. And these are going to be 2 of our ribbons for the cake. So I'll go ahead and show you that as well. Place that here, and you can kind of do it. I kind of do it at a steeper angle. It's kind of a... I'm going to take one more. I'm going to do the exact opposite. So I'm going to place it right next to it and go out at the exact same angle and put a nice angle there. Those are going to be my 2 ribbons for coming outside the edge of the bow. So I'm